Good morning, good morning. Yeah, that's awesome. I sure hope so. Your guess is as good as mine. Do you think the commoners are going to acknowledge reality soon, or? I mean, you know, there's a story of the Nile. Yeah, I guess you can put your own kind of twist on those things if you want to, huh? Reality would be good. The facts and the concerns with our children and the abuse, the vaccines. I mean, many have already shared their horrific experiences and thoughts and feelings about what's been going on with a lot of those things over the years. I mean, at least we have places that we can vent and share those horrific feelings. I know, it's just another show and marketer for some of them in different avenues. Capitalize, and commercialize. Now, is the Botox for your wrinkles or migraines? Both, okay. Why do you breathe? I know, it's amazing, isn't it? The lack of communication with reality and what's going on here. The years that these children have been held hostage and abused. It's not the only situation like that. Many have already been killed. And you have these people that are aware trying to tell others, and it just becomes another round of people trying to find out who killed Kennedy. Who's trustworthy? Who's the problem? Analyzing people, and that's just another business, and it's so sick and disgusting to us at the level of people who get involved with these things and don't understand humanitarian things. But when you see that it's not in mainstream at all, I guess that just gives them the excuse, well, if they're not going to acknowledge it, we don't have to either, right? Yeah, and then you just have pigs licking other pigs' assholes, taking lies and bullshit to their deathbeds while innocent people suffer so they can live in their slop. And use our children as shields and profit margins. Really, really disgusting. I mean, you can't really describe that level of disgust. Can you think of a word that can describe how disgusting and disturbing that is? Because I really tried to come back.
Hey, we need to talk. When you're driving, we're watching. We see you glance at your phone.
Or touch up your makeup. You're always sad.
Pay attention.
So why don't you? We appreciate you driving us everywhere, but we get worried sometimes.
Our safety depends on you.
Depends on you.
So think about us in the backseat. Think about us. And drop the distraction. Please, be safe when you're driving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Curb appeal. More like curb appalling. Now what do we have next? Now that looks incredible. Power. Oh wow. I see you, Mark Schaefer, or a current resident.
Russia is building reactors in Egypt and Turkey. Chinese state nuclear firms are building projects across the Gulf. And if Russia gets to Saudi Arabia first, Moscow will then hold the keys to Saudi and their energy infrastructure for the next 100 years. But why would Saudi Arabia need nuclear technology in the first place? The real problem is Iran, as always. In 2022, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made it clear, and I quote, "If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, we will get one too." Out of necessity, Saudi Arabia feels surrounded. They're surrounded by Iranian proxies, the Houthis in Yemen firing missiles at their oil facilities, Hezbollah in Lebanon. In 2023, they tried the China route. Beijing brokered a deal with Iran to restore diplomatic relations. Saudi Arabia thought maybe this ends the conflict. Maybe Beijing can now be the new security broker. But what happened? Iran's weapons kept flowing to the Houthis, attacks on the Gulf shipping didn't stop. Saudi Arabia is in a real bind. They're watching what's happening in the UAE, and they know that the UAE is defended by the Israeli intelligence and American air defense system. Saudi Arabia knows that it needs to be dependent on the Israeli-American network that they're publicly opposed to. The critical infrastructure that is protected by the partnership that they are refusing to join. And Trump knows this. Proof that Saudi Arabia actually needs what Israel and America can offer. Proof that the formal partnership Saudi Arabia is avoiding is exactly what their survival will depend on. Trump looked at the situation and saw leverage. Saudi Arabia says they don't want to work with Israel, but Saudi Arabia needs to work with Israel. The Trump administration has
Hey guys, Jeff Tackwell again here at Rude World Truck Sales. Wanted to showcase another truck that we just got done building for another
This is what you need to know. The new warning about attacks targeting US water supplies. A world-renowned climber missing on a Pakistan mountain. And a new migrant crisis unfolding in Europe. What sent thousands of people running across this border. I'm James Longwood from ABC News. It's from ABC News. It's Friday, July 31st, and this is what you need to know. Let's get right to the big story. The FBI and EPA are warning water utilities across the country to be on high alert after a wave of cyber attacks targeted dozens of water systems in Minnesota, with hackers locking operators out of critical systems. Although drinking water has not been contaminated, one town had to switch to a storage tank after hackers shut down normal water flows. While the FBI has not confirmed who's behind the attacks, sources say investigators suspect an Iran-linked group because the apparent goal was to disrupt water services, not demand a ransom. 2 years ago, an Iran-linked cyber attack targeted a water treatment plant near Pittsburgh. President Trump says an agreement has been reached for Hamas to disarm and Israel to withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Trump says the agreement will be carried out in phases, eventually providing Gaza with a new Palestinian government. Trump claims Israeli troops will leave Gaza once the Palestinian groups disarm. A Hamas official has said the group has agreed to the plan. No official comment from Israel. Aid groups have been warning for months about the devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza. A Russian missile may have crossed into NATO territory, landing in eastern Poland during a massive assault on Ukraine. Polish officials say the missile crashed in a field near the Ukrainian border, leaving a large crater but causing no injuries. Poland immediately scrambled fighter jets. Prime Minister Donald Tusk says all signs point to a Russian cruise missile. Investigators are continuing to examine the debris. A deadly migrant crisis is unfolding on Europe's only land border with Africa. Thousands of people from Morocco have surged into Spain's North African enclave on the border with Morocco. Some swam for hours around fences into Ceuta. Officials say nearly 20 people have died. Spain has deployed its military to help restore order. Only a few weeks ago, Spain's Supreme Court ruled that those who reach the area by sea cannot be immediately returned without due process. It's still unclear why the border was suddenly overwhelmed. Morocco does not recognize Ceuta as Spanish territory, and relations between the two countries are often strained over it. An American is among 10 people missing after an avalanche on one of the world's tallest mountains. It happened on Pakistan's Broad Peak.
Senator
Officials say
Collins
they haven't
supports
received any
advocates
communication
for
from
cancer
the group since
research
the
so that
avalanche.
cancer survivors
They have
live
detected
better
the
lives.
location of 4 of their trackers who don't know if the climbers they belong to are alive or dead. Local officials say among the missing is world-renowned mountaineer Nemal Persia, who was featured in a popular Netflix documentary, and climber Mallory Geis of Texas. We're told weather is hampering the rescue effort. Turning to Washington, Acting Attorney General Todd
Up to
Blanche's
testify in front of
confirmation has stalled
Congress
after
to
2
do nothing
outgoing
more
Republican
than
senators, John Cornyn and
enrage
Tom Tillis, are
America
demanding written
one last
proof
time.
that a controversial part of President Trump's settlement with the IRS was thrown out. Part of the settlement
He's
involves a
Fauci. Now some
$1 billion
highlights of this.
so-called anti-weaponization
Fauci pleads the
fund,
fifth for
taxpayer
everything,
money,
which
to
actually
compensate
breaks the
people
law
who claim
because
they
he's
were
been
unfairly
pardoned.
targeted
We'll watch him
by
get
government
grilled.
prosecutors.
We'll watch him break the
Those
law.
people
We'll watch him
rioters
shake
who
as he
stormed the Capitol
reads
on
his
January
little
6th.
statements.
Branch
This is
recently
very
said
entertaining.
after widespread
This
backlash that
is
the fund
good
is not
political
being established,
theater,
but he
and it
never put
is
that
nothing
promise on
more than
paper.
that. Welcome back to
Senator
JP
Tillis
Red
suggests
Channel, my
Donald
freedom-loving
Trump's
friend.
advisors
This is
want to
where we
revive
help
the
spread the
fund.
light of truth and freedom because truth conquers. Now, one man, Anthony Fauci, which I think safe to say we're both
FIFA's
big
president Gianni
fans of.
Infantino is rapidly
Big
losing
Fauci
support for his
fan
plan to sell
right
off part
here.
of the World Cup to private investors,
Fauci
including
doesn't
George
seem to
Kushner.
be on the
The
same
European
mission
Football Association
of
first said they would
spreading
boycott the
the
tournament
truth.
if the plan goes ahead.
He's more of
And now
a
the
let's spread
North
the
American
virus and
Association
then spread the cure for that. That's worse things than the virus itself. Whatever. He's science. In other words, is what Fauci does. And gosh dang it, it's who Fauci is. He is science. Now, before we look at some of the clips, which I'm glad our tax dollars go to creating content like this. Set up this Yahoo in front of the Senate. He's going to testify, and it's going to make good content. Will it create justice? What does it have a hope in hell of creating justice? Absolutely not. We're creating content for Americans to be entertained by. That's what this is. It's nothing more. I would be a moron if I thought it was going to be anything more. But it's just that, and it's tax dollars well spent. This is good content. I think we've got Fauci. He's been in the scene since 2020. We know who he is, or if you have AIDS, then he's been on the scene since the 1980s. About Fauci's work with the AIDS, AZT, look into it. The guy's been busy for a few decades. So, I am happy my tax dollars have gone here. But make no mistake, I'll give you the spoiler alert right now. Fauci will never face justice. One of the last clips you'll see is, an announcement. Fauci's going to face serious consequences because he's pleading the fifth, even though he's been pardoned, which breaks the law. I'll just spoil it for you. He will face no consequences for that, nor consequences for what us little people would call crimes against humanity. But for someone in his position, it's just doing his job. I would be a moron if I thought, well, this hearing's supposed to create justice. Not a hope in hell. It's not designed to do that. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly how this system functions as we go. Can't wait. But first, let's hear Senator Josh Hawley asking Fauci some basic questions to give you a taste of how excited Fauci is to share the truth. By the way, it's why this matters. It actually doesn't matter. It's just political theater. But why it matters in the imaginary sense is Fauci can't really say truth, nor can he tell lies during this hearing. That's why he's pleading the fifth, even though it's actually not his right in these proceedings, because he could perjure himself. If he tells what you and I would call the truth, like, yeah, I funded the damn lab, I funded it, okay? That would perjure himself relative to his previous testimony in years past. Not allowed to lie under oath. you and I aren't allowed to. He probably could get away with it. And he can't lie present day, because that could be perjury present day. So his pardon that Biden autopen signed with his cold dead hand, it pardons him for his past crimes, not newly created crimes. That's why that matters. That's why you're going to see Fauci just refusing to answer basic questions like what day of the week it is. Let's take a look at that. And keep in mind, you're going to be hearing science talking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc?
Huh, Doc. I like that.
Let's try something.
Let's try.
What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
That's great. I love this guy's, he just had the slightest smirk on his face when Fauci started saying that. And by the way, shout out to Fauci's lawyer, who advised him, hey man, if they ask you what day of the week it is, do not answer that question. So apparently his counsel told him not to answer what day of the week it is. Let's hear more.
Tie you're wearing.
Color tie you're wearing.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights.
Yeah, actually, to be fair to Fauci, I couldn't answer what color tie he has on. It's kind of confusing. It's like a kind of a dark blue, gray, approaching gray, with white speckles, red speckals, maybe blue speckles. Like, that's actually a very hard question to answer in a straightforward way. So, doesn't want to perjure himself, where, next year he could show up and be like, we have evidence that tie was not blue, it was actually a light gray.
It's under the Fifth Amendment.
Let's go on.
Of the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
Trick question, there is no carpet. Wouldn't that be fun? There's probably carpet, it's probably blue, but,
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the
he's just shaking his head. Fauci, you got black guy disapproval, buddy.
Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one.
Okay. Now, elsewhere in the proceedings, Fauci telegraphed all this, and you'll see with his shaking hands, he's reading off a statement, which, by the way, double space. Shout out. Who double spaces anymore? That's great. You can see right through the page. He's reading off his statement saying, I'm not going to answer questions. I'm going to plead the fifth, and we'll see shortly about, he's actually not allowed to plead the fifth. Doesn't matter, because he's not one of us. He's one of them. We'll talk about who that is and how this functions in a second. It's more simple than you think.
Although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government.
Dude, how bad is he shaking? Yeah, I don't know if, Fauci's 190, his soul left his body probably by the time he was a teenager, so you're not surprised to see that, but is that Parkinson's, or is he just, nervous? I doubt he's nervous. Do sociopaths get nervous? Not really? Okay.
And my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress under the advice of my attorney.
This is pure science right here.
I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Later on, you'll talking about his attorney. You'll see Rand Paul actually throw his attorney out. That's fun. And Brett Weinstein on Twitter says, yeah, you're not going to answer questions on the grounds he may incriminate himself. That's exactly why he won't answer questions. And we're going to throw it back to Senator Josh Hawley and the man of science himself, because if you're a numbskull like me, you think one-dimensionally, you know very little about the law, and you're like, Fifth Amendment, I've heard of that one. That means you don't have to testify against yourself. And that's true. However, there's some other code in the law that says, yeah, if you've been pardoned, you actually waive your Fifth Amendment right. In theory, that makes sense, because if you're pardoned for crimes, then you can testify, but it's not against yourself, because you're not going to face any consequences due to the pardon. So you extrapolate it, it makes sense. But you don't get your cake and eat it too. You don't buy the law. Do we go by the law in this country anymore? The Epstein people, they're fine. They're fine. They probably did nothing wrong. Well, they control the justice system, so it doesn't really matter. You don't get your cake and eat it too, where you get a pardon and you get to plead the fifth. The law doesn't. The law is meant to create the look of transparency. So let's check in with Senator Josh Hawley, informing Anthony Fauci that, he's not allowed to plead the fifth.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sit behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt.
And everything you didn't know you knew.
Okay, I think you have 10 questions left. Is this something I can see? Yes. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
We're not doing the law here, though, but say we're doing the law. Okay. We'll get back to the video in just a second, but first I want to tell you about something in my health practice that I absolutely never miss, and that's taking my grass-fed beef liver by Ancestral Supplements every single day. Why? Because having a slow metabolism, low energy, and mental fog are my primary enemies in life. Beef liver is considered nature's multivitamin for a reason. It gives you most of the daily vitamins and minerals that you need, like vitamin A, B12, K, and iron. And because it comes in the form of real food, beef liver, your body can absorb 85% more of that nutrition than if it came from some synthetic pill. And personally, I've known about the immense value of beef liver for a long time, but my problem was I didn't like eating liver. Didn't like the taste of it. Plus, it's a pain in the butt to cook liver. However, Ancestral Supplements solved that problem for me with their grass-fed beef liver. Now I quickly and easily get all the benefits of nature's multivitamin without the hassle of cooking, or quite frankly, the taste. I love the grass-fed beef liver because it keeps my metabolism fast, energy high, mind sharp, and my cravings for crap low. If you want to conquer low energy, bring grass-fed beef liver into your life. Go to ancestralsupplements.com/JPReacts, and for 15% off, use discount code JPReacts. Now back to the video.
Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally.
Nice.
Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you?
Not to add it in regularly. I
That's a
might
question.
try it as in like I
On
might
the
try
advice
a
of
little
counsel, I
bit.
respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah, well, we're surprised you declined to answer that, Fauci. What I have to appreciate is what's going through Fauci's beady little mind when he's just sitting there and Holly's ripping into him. Best discernment I have is he's ripping into him from the angle of truth and reality. So what's Fauci doing? You got to think he's one of two extremes. He's either sitting there just pooping himself, feels absolutely humiliated, maybe scared, or he's just on the opposite end of the spectrum. You just hear a nice Tweety bird sound in his head. He's just tranquil inside. Not a care in the world because he knows there's no possible way he's going to face justice. And he's sociopathic enough. A normal person sitting in his shoes should feel humiliated. That's actually the healthy, appropriate emotion to feel there. He's disconnected from that. What he did to people, like, compared to, like, sitting there facing, like, little emotional thing, I'm gonna lie, I'm humiliated. dude, what he's done to people, like, this guy's emotionally checked out decades ago. So anyway, but you do have to appreciate what's the mystery going on inside of it. Which of the two extremes is Fauci right now? Now we're going to take a little trip down memory lane, one of my favorite Fauci moments, and then we're going to get to this trial. Like, how is that functioning? What's it supposed to do? How can we understand what's happening? Because we know he's not going to face any consequences. I'll just tell you what's going on in a second. But first, one of my favorite memories of the Fauci era, back when they were doing the crusade, like, everybody's got to get the shot, like, you're selfish if you don't. And they rolled up on a guy who, unfortunately for them, is a independent thinker.
You gonna pass?
Yeah, definitely.
He's gonna pass on the vaccine.
Paying people to get vaccinated, when you start talking about incentivizing things to get people vaccinated, there's something else going on with that. Something else going on.
It is something going on.
Yeah, something else.
You're right. But I'm glad millions of people like me and most everybody here didn't get an incentive. You know what their incentive was? Protecting their health and protecting the city. Who can do it anymore?
It's okay, because my incentive, y'all campaign is about fear. It's about inciting fear in people. You all attack people with fear. That's what this pandemic is. It's a fear. It's fear, this pandemic. That's all it is.
That man spoke for all of America on that one, at least the ones using their brain. And there's Fauci in the car afterwards. Like, what's he thinking there? Like, keep in mind, like, he's 190 years old. He's a white guy. Like, how's he think? He probably says to his little assistant, like, those people usually just take it. Why didn't he? Okay, before we get to more Fauci, Rand Paul, and he's committing crimes by pleading the fifth, and you're going to face consequences. Let's look at what's really going on here and understand it. To understand Fauci's placement, the trial, might something happen? No, it never will. To understand this, you need to watch mafia movies and shows. Watch The Godfather, watch The Sopranos. That will inform how this works, ladies and gentlemen. The governmental elites, it functions exactly like the mafia. First, you and I gotta pay them money. They demand it, just like the mafia. So we do that. Why do we do that? Just like the mafia, they say, well, because you get our protection. We're the government. We're here to protect you. What are you going to protect me from? Well, if you don't pay, or if you do pay, primarily, we'll protect you from us, forcing you to pay. That's what the mafia does. They go to a business owner, and they offer protection, and if they don't pay the mafia goes after them. So, the American mafia, the government mafia, I should say, will go after you. Also, if you understand how the mafia works, they know how to operate above the law. They know where the line, they know where the guardrails are. Like, granted, the guardrails are outside of the law, but they know the guardrails they need to stay in. They know exactly what and how to get away with what they want to get away with. One of the ways they do that, they have the right connections in the justice system. So if they're breaking the law, and it's going to be obvious, yeah, the mafia guy, he might stand trial. We're going to go through the show trial because we got to show the public that we're here protecting them from these mafia people that we're empowering. So we're going to do the show trial. The mafia guy sits there the whole time knowing he's not going to face any justice because his mob controls the judge, pays him off, has blackmail on the judge, whatever. The government mafia, the exact same thing. It's just a little bit of a bigger scale, but the exact same thing. So Fauci, did he break the law? Did he commit crimes against humanity? Yes, he did. Was there ever any threat of him facing consequences? No. There has not been an earnest investigation. We went through the motions of it. There has not been an earnest investigation. And the President of the United States in 2024 pardoned him for all his crimes. President Hunter's dad. He pardoned him for all his crimes. That's a mafia-like tactic, ladies and gentlemen. So you sit here, you're watching theater. This is mafia theater that the mafia wants, because the mafia wants the public continued to be convinced that the police force, if you will, that the mafia controls, is here to protect the public. If that illusion were to be shattered, the mafia loses power. Doesn't want that. So, let's send it back to Senator Rand Paul, who's feeding Fauci a spoonful of truth.
1 million Americans died from COVID-19. Some estimate as many as 15 million people died worldwide.
By the way, Rand Paul, on the whole, I like him, but also, that's BS. 1 million Americans died of COVID-19. Maybe, but really? We've all seen the things like, cool, if you die in a car accident, they're still going to test you for COVID. And if you had COVID, it's labeled a COVID death. So, the truth still matters with that. Let's not forget that just because these stats are being used against Fauci. By the way, Senator Rand Paul, is he part of the mafia? I don't know. Like, I question everything now. I used to think, well, Trump is the most anti-mafia guy ever. He's against the mafia establishment. And now it's like, oh no, he's very much in the mafia. So it's like, maybe Rand Paul is. I don't think he is, but I don't think what I think has always been accurate. But even if he's not, he is surrounded by mafia members, or people who are controlled by the mafia, which by extension makes them part of the mafia. Shout out to Senator Rand Paul, by the way. Take a look at who I assume is like an aide of his, assistant over his right shoulder.
Step up to the plate this summer with your Irving Rewards card. What?
It's like Gestapo. Did you ever see the end of The Godfather? Girl Scouts. You too? I saw you with those thin mints and s'mores.
I love the American government. Is she hot? Give her a job. Tell her we work late around here a lot of times.
Fauci promoted the theory that the virus arose naturally.
Selling them in front of all the pawn shops.
Do you
remember that? When they were selling the goods. It was brilliant, but they told him, hey, shh, don't do that. Remember? Do you remember what?
Of evidence.
I mean, she's beautiful. I'm gonna give her that. So I assume she's really good at her job.
Suggesting the virus originated in the lab. The American people deserve answers. The American people deserve to know why dangerous research
Not gonna get 'em.
is funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country.
Well, he's not wrong. We deserve to know all those things. This system is not designed to give us what we deserve. Do you get that? This system is designed to function like a mafia, and you and I ain't in it. Did you get that?
In a lab that lacked acceptable safety standards. The decision to fund dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, will likely go down in history as perhaps one of the worst public health decisions. Frankly, the American people deserve an apology. I hope today, Dr.
You're a gazer too.
Is that all we deserve?
Fauci will come clean. Admit it was a mistake to fund dangerous research in China. Admit that the risk of this dangerous research exceeded any possible benefits. Ask forgiveness and pledge to help our government devise safeguards so a man-made epidemic never happens again.
Now, that part kind of confuses me. I think Rand Paul, whoever wrote his political theater script, I think could have done a better job. That's not what people want to hear. People who have got like 6 years of emotional issues against Fauci. We don't sit here saying, I want that guy to get what he deserves. I want him to offer an apology, admit what he did, and ask for forgiveness. No, that does not speak. That does not represent the minds and hearts of Americans. At the least, we're like, I want to see the guy rot in prison for the rest of his life. I wouldn't mind a public hanging, though. So, like this show trial, like, if in theory, all it's designed to do is, like, get him to apologize, admit what he did, and ask for forgiveness, like, one, he's not going to do those things, and two, why even bother? Like, is it like criminal charges?
Even then.
At this point, it's good to remind you, Tulsi Gabbard, before she was pushed
Whether
out
you
because she wasn't
complain or
obedient to
anybody
Trump. Yeah,
apologizes.
her husband had cancer. I'm sure that's why she resigned. Believe what we're told, ladies and gentlemen. So shortly before she was pushed out, she came out with some kind of DNI report saying, here's some screwed up stuff Fauci did. Stuff we all knew, but it was like refreshing to see an official government agency come out with it. So the reminder here is she came out with that after the statute of limitations of prosecuting Fauci expired. There is no accident in that. That's how the mafia functions. They do not want their members facing consequences, so they insure it. They ensure they don't face consequences. But they want the idiot people in the public, as you and I, in their eyes, to believe they might face consequences. It's like, no, this hearing is going on after the statute of limitations. So he's on trial and facing the consequence of having to say an apology? Do you really treat Americans like they're that dumb? Yes, they do treat us as though we're that dumb. Most of us are, by the way. Okay, let's get more to the point. Here's Rand Paul letting Fauci know, like, you're breaking the law by pleading the fifth after you've been pardoned. Let's take a look.
The chairman has denied your assertion of privilege and directed you to answer, but you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider, after this hearing, what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions.
No, there won't be.
Testified today. Senator Peters.
Those are the right words to say, but man, they're just empty. The committee's gonna have to get together and figure out what the repercussions are that you're going to face for having pleaded the fifth, refuse to answer questions after you've been pardoned. Yeah, the repercussions are going to be like, admit you shouldn't have done that. Admit it, Fauci. He's like, under the advice of counsel, I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right. So he won't even admit that. So that there's no repercussions. Fauci almost pisses me off more. The fact that he's in this hearing, this is, I look, ooh, Fauci's really going to have to face the heat for what he did. No, this almost pisses me off more because it's just showcasing, here's the guy and he's above the law. Watch him be above the law in your face. Here's a new law he's breaking. He's refusing to answer questions after he's pleaded the fifth. Watch him break that law. Go ahead and say there's going to be repercussions for that. Thank you for saying that. And there won't be. Now, last clip. For some reason, Fauci's lawyer, who didn't have the right to talk because he's not the one that's testifying, nor was Fauci the one that's testifying, his lawyer kept yelling out. So here's Rand Paul in the midst of dealing with him and throwing him out. The most interesting thing going on here is watching Rand Paul's very intellectual aide
Experience matters. After a devastating attack, Susan Collins led the way forward, enacting historic bipartisan reforms that made us safer. Susan saved 250,000 Maine jobs. She protects access to quality health care, and she delivered the Social Security Fairness Act, boosting the incomes of 25,000 Maine retirees. America's most bipartisan senator, always working for Maine.
Today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word.
By the way, she chews gum. That's how stereotypical can you be? She looks like a woman that would chew gum. What? I'm probably going to be a senator one day, because right now I'm a top aide. Do you know why you're a top aide? You don't know why, do you? You seriously don't know? Well, I'm going to be a senator.
I said sit quietly, you are not recognized. Another word.
Oh, she's getting up. Time to get coffee.
This is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered. For a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
I really like her. Let's zero in. Like, she tells him to throw him out. That's fun.
Security, please remove him from the room.
These aides, like, just, what's your job? I mean, aside from what might be her job, not that a member of the Senate or Congress in the United States of America would ever do inappropriate things with an aide. It's like their job is like, hey, carry around a bunch of like messy looking folders and stuff. What should I have in the bathroom? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Just carry those around, and it creates an aura. It creates an aura that we're doing stuff. So that's Fauci enraging the American people one last time, and I would thank you for that, Fauci. It's great theater. And furthermore, I think it's the American justice system allowing someone to be above the law, which, as much as Fauci enrages me, that enrages me more. Put them together, and boy, I feel like boiling inside. It's great. Let me know what you think about Fauci's last stand to enrage America in the comments below, and I'll look forward to seeing you on our next video. But until then, stay free.
Shots, starving stars and forget-me-nots. Got trees and slips that I like to puff, and I French inhale when they've had enough. Got a squad of miles that I split in half, face like a tin, legs like a giraffe, and a Cadillac. Got a bender ass, smoking on some good Kenny Pendergrass. Really can't fuck with the main flow. Did that shit, keep your body in the main coast. Always want hot, do I look like a rainbow? No. Are we made for the same clothes? No. Can we rock at the same show? No. Can I at least get a hey bro, maybe? I'm any better man, can't find a better man. You are a rookie, I am a veteran. I am the efferent state. On your medicine, you go for this, you gotta let her in.
We're changing up our arm routine a little bit. Yeah. We learned a few new moves. I'm trying to kind of focus my breath a little bit with that. Yeah, it's a good time to do listening and reading. I can listen and read when I'm doing that. It's just it's hard to talk because you have the in and out. It messes up kind of the... But I can read and listen to stuff. Yeah, we're working with the 8-pound weight and the resistance bands.
At Capital Group, we design our active ETFs to weather the ups and downs of the market, so they can be rooted at the core of a portfolio. They're meticulously crafted to endure. Capital Group, actively different, active ETFs.
I love shopping at Ocean State Job Lot. They have the best selection of...
Before I started working on the Twitter files in late 2022, and before people started hearing a lot about digital censorship, there was a court case filed called Missouri v. Biden, and it was the states of Missouri and Louisiana, along with a series of people, including some very reputable academics, who were suing the Biden administration for essentially interfering with their speech by recommending that they be de-amplified on social media. And that case went from Nowheresville to the Supreme Court in about a year. Or very fast. It's extremely fast. It's because of a variety of factors, among other things, helped by the Twitter files amplifying digital censorship as an issue. It made it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sort of split the baby. They decided not to rule on the central issue, kicked it down to the lower courts. It was misreported as a big loss for free speech people. Actually, what they did is they just took a pass on it. But the courts just ruled on it. They gave a big victory to the plaintiffs and basically said that the government cannot interfere with social media, that the First Amendment holds in the same way it always has, even with the internet, which is an incredibly important ruling, but you didn't hear about it in the United States because of the way the news works.
So we had Jay Bhattacharya on the show, and he's one of the
plaintiffs.
One of the plaintiffs. He was the genuine expert, like true world-renowned epidemiologist, public health expert at Stanford, part of the Great Barrington Declaration, basically pointing out that we should protect people who are at risk and otherwise not lock down the society. He was basically giving what was correct and was on all these lists. Some of the things that came out in the Twitter files were that he was put on these various blacklists at Twitter.
It was one of the first things that we found was Jay's name next to a picture that said Trends Blacklist.
So what was happening there? Like just since this case is partly about, like, Jay is Jay maybe the most famous of the plaintiffs in this case?
I would say.
I mean, he's now that
he now
took Fauci's job.
Yeah, and it's important to back up because people may have a skewed understanding of what Jay was doing or saying back then. He did an experiment very early in COVID that proved two things that were very important to public understanding of the crisis. One was that COVID was far more infectious than understood. In other words, any intervention you might think about doing, like keeping kids out of school or putting masks on or doing any of those things, it likely wasn't going to work. He found out that the disease spread far faster than anyone understood. He also found that the death rate was much lower than had been reported, about 100 times lower. Yes. Both of those things were suppressed, and as a result, we had huge problems. For instance, the whole debate about whether or not schools should be locked down was massively affected by the suppression of information like this. So, what were they doing at Twitter? They were taking all their cues about what information to publish about COVID from the CDC, from the NIH and other government agencies, and these things were being de-amplified, which basically meant that if he couldn't trend, and there were lots of other what they called bugs. They put like 100 bugs on his thing, and basically nobody saw his research.
I'm trying to conjure the study he did. If I remember correctly, it was in like March or April of 2020.
Right.
And I think and correct me if I'm misremembering something.
Santa Clara.
Yeah, it was Santa Clara, California. He basically, just to recap, the question of how deadly is COVID is a product of a basic fraction. How many people get infected, that's the denominator, and how many people die from it, that's the numerator.
Right.
And that ratio was being treated much higher by an order of magnitude by people like Ferguson out of this imperial model out of the UK. They were just saying millions and millions and millions of people are going to die.
They were saying 3.4%. That is a horrific number.
Yeah, that's like the plague type of stuff.
Right.
So then Jay basically said, well, hey, let's just go into a population randomly and see if people have antibodies. And he found something like 15% of the population that he just randomly was testing had antibodies, meaning they had been exposed to it and didn't die. And so that numerator went from 100 to 1,000 or 10,000, meaning instead of 3.4%, it was 0.03%. So roughly, I'm fudging. I'm using the numbers as an abstraction. But
you're exactly right. We could have expected that the number of people who would have had antibodies would have been very small. He found that it was enormous, right, relatively, and that completely changed, our understanding of how deadly the disease was, right? We later got much more concrete information about it, and eventually the CDC even admitted to all the things that he was saying, but that was much later. Like, in this news environment, it's too late. If you don't get it in the first day, it's too late. So,
and just to round out the what does this mean, antibodies, what are you talking about? It's like, well, just imagine, especially it's interesting because it was in California, which faces east. So imagine you've got businessmen traveling to China, traveling to Japan. They come home, they've got a cold, they're not really sure they just picked up some bug.
Yeah, that's kind of more
through their house, then their community, then their kids' school, and before you know it, 15% of your community has been exposed to this thing. That's basically my interpretation of what he was finding.
Right.
It was happening probably for 6+ months or longer, maybe even a year. I've met people who basically said they got hit by a nasty flu in the fall of 2019. And then in retrospect, because they had the breathing and some of the other, they're like, I think I might have gotten COVID, and they had traveled to
yeah, we did stories later about Wuhan, who had some of the first cases there. So it's absolutely plausible that the disease could have been going back and forth to the United States, dating back to the fall of 2019 or even earlier, right? And that shows in the numbers, right? And they escalated very quickly from there. It's also important to point out, Jay didn't care, right? He's a scientist. It doesn't matter to him whether the number is high or low. He's just trying to find out what it is, right? And so it was an absolute shock to him to find that there was resistance to learning what the reality was. And there was tremendous resistance to it.
So, what, in the initial filing, what was the claims being made about the role of the government in suppressing Jay and the other plaintiffs? Because one of the things I noticed as I was kind of going back through some of this morning, it's basically every conceivable person in the Biden administration across all of its different apparatus were named these things on all the alphabets, all of the agencies, very broadly, including like somebody from like the climate advisor. So of course, like everybody was in on telling Twitter and Facebook and Google who to shut up.
Troy Jackson was one of Graham Platter's most loyal supporters. The Nazi tattoo, blaming women for getting raped, Platter's violence toward women, Troy Jackson.
Your credit score is only part of your financial.
What was the core assertion there in that initial case, which has now been ruled in favor of Dr. Bhattacharya and others?
So they were asserting something that First Amendment scholars would call jawboning, which is when the government doesn't order you to take something down, but strongly suggests, with the implication that they can make life unpleasant for you if you don't agree, right? One of the judges I heard in a colloquy during this case described it, as like being like the mafia, like, boy, you've got a nice university there, sure would be a shame if something happened to it, right? Like, so jawboning is when the government says, we strongly suggest that you take that down or de-amplify that, right? And they were asserting that there was this widespread program within the government to send suggestions to social media companies that they take down or de-amplify certain content. The problem was that in their initial complaint, there were a lot of gaps. They didn't really know exactly how all that worked. They knew what happened on the end, which is that certain people got removed or taken down, but they didn't know how it happened. And so that's kind of where I came in, and Michael Schellenberger and some other people. The Twitter files was the middle part, right? And we didn't really know. We weren't really aware of each other, the plaintiffs in that case and the Twitter files reporters, not that much, but it later became very apparent that it was interconnected.
And what has the ruling, because there was an initial ruling that seemed very, very strong before the Supreme Court essentially punted it back. So what was that initial ruling? Because it had strong language in it too. And then where are we today?
So the initial ruling, it was the 4th of July, I believe in 2023 or 2024, and the judge in the case in the lower court was so infuriated by the evidence that had been produced, and by then there had been a lot more evidence, that he issued this sweeping injunction saying that the government could not have any contact with these companies, which was infuriating to the Biden administration. They fought it tooth and nail, and when it got to the Supreme Court, this is what people don't understand. The people think that the plaintiffs lost at the Supreme Court. All that happened was that the injunction was lifted, and it was sent back to the lower court to be fully resolved. Like, in other words, the judge said, before we hear the end of this case, we have to slap an emergency injunction on the government to stop them from doing this anymore. When we're done, we'll issue a final ruling, but this is a temporary, emergency injunction.
And just an injunction is you can't do this.
Cease and desist.
Yep. Okay. So the Supreme Court says until the final ruling is determined, which we are not in a position to do, you can't have the injunction. You have to basically find the government guilty, and then you can tell them to stop and never do it again.
Right. Now, they've found the government guilty. They've just basically said, you must follow the law, which they were already breaking, which is kind of a problem, right? it's a win intellectually. It's a little unsatisfying in the sense that it may not have the practical impact that we would have liked.
And that, so explain what that means. Like why does a win? So the new ruling that says, oh yes, no, they were absolutely violating the First Amendment rights of the plaintiffs,
right?
And doing stuff that the federal government is very clearly, explicitly not allowed to do, right? Is that fair? Is that a fair summary?
That is absolutely fair, and that's exactly what they said. And what they've said is, you can't do that anymore. The government, however, during the temporary injunction, was barred from any contact with these companies. So now what they'll do is they'll have contact and they'll say, oh, but we're not making recommendations. We're not telling people not to take content down. And they were already, crossing that line before, which is why this is, it's a little worrisome because, they can still break the law now.
One of the things that this is so deep, it's just deeply connected to sort of two different forces. So one is shutting down speech that you don't like. But that seems like it's really just a step towards a bigger goal, which is promoting the narrative you do want people to hear. Both like with the censorship files, the actions of the federal government, and then the corporate press, which I want to get into because their role in this has been completely bizarre. And they haven't covered this recent court case alone, which is...
It tells you everything you need to know about how the press works in this country now, right? Even 20 years ago, it would have been done completely differently.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops.
So when I see these guys coming over, I have no ill will towards them. You have to leave. You've got to go back. I don't want you here, but I don't hate you. I just don't want you in the fucking country. That's it. Does that make sense? They're invaders? Well, you have to look at it from their perspective. Spain is a foreign country that from their, they don't even understand the concept of that. They have no idea about this. They're just going to try and show up wherever the fuck they can get free stuff. It's not complicated, right? Understanding is different than approving.
There is one famous YouTube video. The Chinese man, 60-something, 70 years old, and still go to her mom's execution dying site to say, "I'm sorry, Mom. I was 16. I did not know. I turned you over."
Capitalist insects preying on people, and there was thousands of them. They're working class people, and maybe they inherit their dad's house, and then they build another one, and they're renting it out or something. And he's going after them.
Yeah, so what do you think the point of this was? Because he had already sent out letters to their mailboxes that they were going to owe this tax. So it's not an informational thing. He just basically doxed these people.
Yeah, he's and we're talking about it. So when did anybody ever talk about the mayor? Did we ever talk in our podcast about Bill de Blasio? No. Michael Bloomberg once in a while. But no. That's what he wants. He's a world publicity Fauci-like narcissist, and he's got a lot of money, so he didn't care if he's going to be. If he's one term, he's angling for something like the vice presidential nomination. That's what he's angling for. And he thinks that he can smile and sweet talk, but he's got a mean streak in him. Everybody should remember that. He's a mean person. That's why he does stupid things like, "You're going to get an email. I'm going to dox you. I'm going to have to write your neighborhoods. Oh, you're mad that he yelled Allah Akbar and stabbed some people. Can't hear you." That kind of attitude. And, all of his plans are, he's not going to open a bunch of food markets. The only thing that he's got going for him is he's going to pay the rent. He's going to give them the land so that they can compete. They're inefficient, but maybe they'll have an edge over a private supermarket that has to pay, taxes and stuff. So Everything he does is going to help ruin New York, and they voted for him. But it was only 11% of the resident voting population.
You know, can I bring this up because we've heard a lot of commentary on how the socialists, the DSAs, are taking over the Democratic Party, or they're in a big conflict and they're this big presence. There was an article in a publication called Lyceum by Scott Rasmussen, and he made the argument that by the polls, because he's a polls expert, these socialists really don't make up more than 12%. He had 6% really support him, and another 6% say, well, it'd kind of be a good idea to get things from the socialists. And he says that's only 12%. So all of the media on how this is a very problematic thing in the Democratic Party and the socialists are threatening is probably should be taken less seriously than it is. Although he didn't say that.
That's a good point. And as I said earlier, they have not won one statewide election. Mike Rogers in Michigan is running ahead of both Haley Stevens and El Said.
Alexa, volume 5.
Paxton is running ahead of Tallarico, and they will have more money even than Tallarico. And Susan Collins is running ahead in Maine. We'll see if they win one, because so far they're just an artifact of an urban enclave of downwardly mobile, white, highly educated people who are embittered that they can't buy and have a lifestyle comparable to a stockbroker or a doctor or lawyer, given their worthless gender studies or sociology or psychology degrees, environmental studies. So that's his constituency, but this is the qualifier. And between 1900 and 1917, the Bolsheviks, nobody wanted them. They were nutty. And the Mensheviks and the constitutionalists that wanted to overthrow the Tsar, they were the majority of the people. But that didn't stop the Bolsheviks. The majority of the Iranian people wanted the Shah out, and they wanted a Bani Sadr, goat's body, socialist, secular government. That's what they wanted. Maybe even hard left. And Khomeini and the theocrats hijacked that because they were the true believers and they were willing to kill people and do what's necessary. And so Me Too started out as if any woman who had been in the workplace and a man had propositioned her as quid pro quo, that was a legitimate complaint against Harvey Weinstein, etc. It ended up going after Al Franken because he had a joke where he put his hand near a woman's breast and they destroyed her whole life. Seneca or Garrison Keillor, made some passes or something. It was always, then it got framed as any time a man expressed any sexual interest, he was culpable, whether there was repartee or quid pro quo, and women never do that. Women never sleep with men on their own initiative and seduce them for a promotion. But women are human, and everybody does that at times. But it was so, and same thing with George Floyd is a angel. We have wings, we have a halo in the mural, we have the George Floyd, he did nothing wrong. And then if you said, no, he was trying to pass counterfeit. He was a prison convict. He staged a home invasion where his colleague put a knife to a woman's belly. He was on drugs. He resisted arrest. He had COVID and fentanyl. And they did a police-approved procedure of a neck. I've seen since then on YouTube 1,000 police, when the person's thrashing around and hitting them, they put their knee on their neck, and then the person can't, they don't press it down. That problem was that Officer Chauvin he looked too cruel, the foot. But the point is, then that triggered, it was okay to bomb St. John's Church, precinct, federal courthouse, 14,000 arrests, and Summer of Law, all that crazy. So my point is this: if you let these extremists go and you say, well, they haven't won a state election, no, but they will pick up momentum and they will be a fad and a cult.
And you've got to be careful because they can come to power with very little public support if they know how to operate, and they do. And I think the first stage is where they were democratic socialists. Now they don't talk about being Democrat, they just say they're socialists. If you go on their website, they love Marx. They talk about Cuba, China, Venezuela. They quote Karl Marx. They don't say they're communists yet, because communism differs from socialism in the sense that there are no elections and there's no private property. But if you ask these socialists, and you say Mondale says he's going to confiscate private property if he finds they're not good rental landlords, or if you say he's going to take your second home away by taxing you to death, or you say we're going to have no ID, mail-in balloting, open borders, amnesty for you're destroying election integrity, and you're going to go down the Daniel Noriega way of the elections don't mean anything. So they're getting close. I think if they have some more local successes, they won't object to being called communists. Shannon Bream had that head of the Democratic Socialists. I admire that woman because Shannon Bream said, here's your manifesto. Do you want to have open borders? Yes. Do you want to have amnesty for illegal aliens? Yes. Do you want to defund the police? Absolutely. Do you want to defund the Pentagon? Yes. Do you want to open? Yeah, that was what they admitted to. That's a communist manifesto. Get rid of the prisons.
Yeah. Yeah, get rid of the prisons, get rid of ICE.
I tell you that if she goes into south side of Chicago, she'll have a bodyguard.
That's true. Okay, so let's continue with this crazy left wing. El Said has made the suggestion that he would like to put a head on a spike, and that the first one he would go after is Fetterman. So it's sounding a lot like the French Revolution to me.
He's a basket case. He claims he's a doctor. He had never had a medical license. He was the head medical officer for Detroit. He says he's a man of the people. He and his wife had a combined income of over $600,000. His father-in-law had some connection with donating to the Muslim Brotherhood. One of his top aides ran a kind of a Alzheimer pill scan. Just everything about him is creepy. And right as I'm speaking today, Haley Stevens, who has her own problems, she comes across as that she's
the other Democratic candidate.
Yes, in Michigan. She comes across as she has some kind of fit that she goes, it's almost like she's in a frenzy. And she's very awkward. But I give her credit, she didn't renounce her support for Israel. She's outraised him about 6-1. He's saying the Jews have taken over, I think he will lose. And I think Mike Rogers can beat her. She's an incumbent representative. And I think Tallarico can be beaten, and I think Susan Collins will win, and that will show you that they don't have, but that won't stop them. They will still try to take over the institutions, burrow their way in, etc. But I would love to see a AOC Mondale ticket in 2028. I think they would have the largest loss in history. It would be like McGovern. I had a good friend, and he was the TA, and I was in his class, and he said, kind of like Pauline Kael, she never knew anybody that voted. He said she never did. He had the biggest 72. But if everybody at UC they're in their early 40s and up. I remember the precinct vote. 99.9 for McGovern. I can remember I took a class from a really good guy. He He went to the Naval Academy, I remember, but he was a political science professor. Carl Lamb, kind of a famous, and I took one, and my academic advisor said, you should take that class. He's the only Republican in the entire faculty. In fact, he's the only conservative on the entire campus, student, faculty, anybody. It might be interesting. I said, okay. Then I took Bruce Larkin's class, and you know what we did? I took 2 political science. I thought thank God I wasn't a political science major, but he put the radio on, from Radio Peking, and once every 3 or 4 weeks, Mao spoke, and then he would translate. He knew Chinese, and we had to sit there like, my fellow comrades, we will kill the running dog capitalists. And that's what he did. And he was an out-and-out communist.
Which was similar to the rest of the faculty.
Yes.
All right, just one last thing before we go. Maybe this is a short thing. Bernie says he doesn't regret supporting Plattner when he did. I don't know if you have any...
That's a good communist socialist position to take. Any means necessary. You never apologize for your methodology. It's the aim. The aim is a socialist communist utopia.
Alexa,
so Plattner was for that. So he had, as Stalin said, break a few omelets to make a few eggs to make an omelet. So who cares if he has he got a little rowdy with, he mussed up some girl's hair, got a little rowdy with another one, play acting, locked her in the closet, got a little drunk and put a SS Totenkopf tattoo. Now, he may have bragged about it a little bit. He kind of padded his resume a little bit. He says some kind of crazy things about Jews, but other than that, he's a good socialist. That's Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that is Bernie Sanders.
I remember I used to go a lot to Vermont
and
speak. I spoke at Middlebury, I spoke at the University of Vermont, I spoke on this big agricultural retreat, and I spoke at Burlington, University of Vermont. And everybody said he was their mayor, and then he was their congressman for a while. And they said, oh, Bernie's crazy, we all vote for him. We don't take him seriously. He's kind of a nice guy. He's kind of like a homeless person. He lived in the forest, and he had no money, and his wife saw how crazy he was. That's how his reputation was. They loved him, but nobody took him seriously.
All right, Victor, let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about, or I wonder if you have any ideas on the Joe Biden. The tapes are coming out again for some reason by her, but one second, let's go to some messages and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Victor is on X, his handle is at VD Hansen, and on Facebook at Hansen's Morning Cup, so join him there. Social media is your news outlet. So yeah, the tapes from Robert Herr's interview, but also tapes from his interactions with his ghostwriter. And that was the one I heard where he just talks matter-of-factly of, oh yes, I found these classified files that I've had forever, but he just talks as though, wow, they're just downstairs.
Remember, those were under subpoena, and the ghostwriter destroyed evidence under subpoena. And he said, well, I did it so I could protect their integrity because they were being hacked. I stopped them from being hacked, but he had no security clearance, and Biden was just blabbing and handing him stuff that was classified. People got to remember that they all went after Trump, but Trump is the president of the United States. Had he taken the trouble, he could have written a little memo and said these are declassified. He could do that. He didn't do it. He kind of touched them and said, I say that you're declassified. Like you're a knight or something, knighted them. But Biden had no ability to do that as vice president. He had 4 locations, not one. Mar-a-Lago, if you drive by it, it's got a big guard tower, it's got a fence. He had nothing. That garage was a joke. And then he was sloppy, and he made about, $8 or $9 million off it, of his memoirs. So he just handed all this crap, and it was always... The reason I'm kind of going on, I wrote Counter-Revolution, and I did not fully appreciate to the depth of the Democratic depravity. I really didn't. I didn't realize that he appointed Jack Smith as special counsel within hours or a few days after Trump announced his candidacy in November of 2022 to run. And then once there was a special prosecutor, then he thought, oh my gosh, I'm waging lawfare to destroy Donald Trump because he took classified documents. Somebody's going to start poking around. I've been doing that for 30 years. I know what I'll do. I'll have my lawyer call up the DOJ and say, I'm Dudley Do Right's attorney, Joe Biden, and he suddenly realized that he may have inadvertently, for a year or two, 30 years, found some classified document. And unlike Donald Trump, we are going to comply. And then he made a big deal out of it. Then the lapdog media wrote and said, oh, not Donald Trump, Joe Biden volunteered when he thought there might be a question. It's not even comparable, Victor. I was on a couple of interviews. So then he staged that, and then he thought, I'll have to get a special prosecutor after me. So they appointed, one for him to go through the motions. And of course, Robert Hur found that A, he was senile, and B, he broke the law and committed a felony by taking out classified documents and lying about it, and more importantly, kept them for 30 years. And they had him on tape that he couldn't even answer. So Robert Hur thought, I'm in a really big jam. All these left-wing people hate me. How can I get it? But he's guilty. So I got a good idea. I think what I'll do is, no jury, I'll do the James Comey. Hillary's guilty, of course. She's destroyed her appurtenances. She's destroyed everything. She took but how am I going to get out of this? Because I want to keep my job and she's going to win. I know what I'll do. No jury would convict her. So he said, but of course no one would ever convict a person on this, so there's no reason to indict her. So Robert Hur said the same thing. He said, he's guilty, but when you put him on the stand, he's a poor man, old man with a poor memory. And then Hur was so stupid, the left he thought the left were going to call him, thank you, Bob, that was a great idea. You saved it, and you made Jack Smith more authentic, and now there's just one special problem. It's all over. And what an idiot. Instead they called him up and said, you SOB, you said that he's senile. How dare you talk? Remember that hearing with Kamala Harris and Adam? They all trashed him. And then they basically subpoenaed the tapes and they wouldn't turn him over. Now they've turned him over. And he's worse than you imagine.
Yeah, those tapes.
The tapes with Robert Hur and the tapes with that his speechwriter didn't destroy.
Yeah. We have to thank for even the Fauci diaries, the HHS, I think, director, the Health and Human Services, he and his crew went down into, I think, several different servers to collate all of this stuff.
Bobby Kennedy did too.
Yeah.
Bobby Kennedy, HHS now, he did.
Yeah.
He did he was on television the other night. But you got to remember, he wrote a book about Fauci's lies. The book was about what a pathological liar Fauci was, and they deplatformed him from Instagram and everything, and they hated him. And now it's very ironic that I wrote this in the Counter-Revolution book, that one of the prerequisites to work for Trump so you would have unquestioned loyalty and be angry, was that you had to be a victim of Biden's overreach. So Kash Patel, the FBI, went after him. Remember that? Dan Bongino said they had gone after him. Then he appointed RFK. They had really gone after Orca. They had deplatformed him. And Pete Hegseth, they had gone after him in a way. So he went after people that really were angry that they had gone over, and that would mean that they wouldn't flip or be traitors or whatever.
And these things were published by Rand Paul on his X account, right? And Rand Paul kind of had a little bit of a tiff with Fauci as well. But I want to ask you something more serious. Yeah, dry cleaner comment. But I want to ask you something serious then about that. There is a humorous side to it when people get into
He was the president of Libya.
fighting with each other, I guess, to make it nice. But what do we benefit from that? I know that the founding fathers said one man's ambition will counter another man's ambition, and that's the process by which they'll ferret out evil in this world. Should we just stop there and say, it's just necessary, we understand that?
No, you count on transparency. You count on a watchdog media, but we don't have a watchdog media. It disappeared. We have NBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, Boston Globe, NPR, PBS, ABC, CBS, NBC, Columbia School of Journalism, that whole conglomerate. They're there as adjuncts to the Democratic left-wing project. So think about it. What did they give us? They gave us the Steele dossier is authentic. Donald Trump is a Russian spy. No. You lied and tried to fix an election through that lie. They gave us Hunter laptop. I know it looks incriminating, but it was cooked up in Moscow. It's a product of Russian information services. No, that was a lie. Jussie Smollett, that was a modern lynching. Can you believe that two white males went in with red mega caps and bleach and a rope at 2 in the morning, defied the laws of chemistry, threw the bleach out, and it didn't freeze just because they were so evil? And then they attacked him, but Jussie, being a heroic fellow and diminutive, fought off 2 big, ugly, mean white guys while holding his sandwich and his cell phone and beat them up. But they did put a noose around his neck. And that's proof that it happened. Now, there's a little matter that he wrote checks to the black guys who wore whiteface, basically, but, things happen. So and then the Wuhan lab, every big lie that hurt the country, they've been behind for political purposes. That was behind the 2 impeachments, everything. January 6th, remember what Kamala Harris said? Did you know, audience, what she said? She said that it was equivalent to Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, she said, and 9/11. Think about that. 3,000 people incinerated 9/11, 2,400 bombed to death at Pearl Harbor, and January 6th, where only one person died at the hand violently of another. Maybe 2, but they were both Trump supporters. But it was a 114-pound diminutive, 14-year veteran, and she was basically shot unarmed for the crime of a misdemeanor going through a broken window. And then Officer Byrd was canonized as a victim, who had a disreputable record of misbehavior himself.
Okay, so maybe let's go to a break, Victor, and then come back. I have another question about these files and interviews and those things. Stay with us and we'll be right back. Welcome back, Victor Davis Hanson in his own words. So last question on these Fauci files, Robert Hur tapes, and Joe Biden ghostwriter tapes. So somebody goes to read these things, and this might be too early to ask, but does a person learn something from that about their own conduct if they are to become? Or are they just, I hope it's just by bad example, but I'm not sure.
I do. I think our listeners do. It is beware of nemesis, beware of hubris. On your way up, you're going to go on your way down. So be nice to people. Take an effort. When you have good things going to you and people say, wow, that's great or something, take a deep breath and say, this is sic transit Gloria. Gloria is passing by. Remember the Roman triumphal procession where a slave would run to the dictator or the consul who was being praised by 1 million people in Rome and said, sic transit Gloria, sic transit Gloria. Don't let this go to your head. Think of all the great people that I mean,
Jesus.
it's very hard for people when you get adulation or fame, or you want that, to realize it's not important at all. You're not going to go to heaven for that. It's all based on how you treat people. And these people were not Milley and Bolton and Comey and McCabe and Clapper and Brennan and Fauci and Francis Collins. They were not humble people. They were arrogant. And they thought that their momentary or transitory success or their position of power or their degrees meant something. And they would be iconic forever. And then when they found out they weren't, James Comey was the most powerful law enforcement person in the United States. He was reduced to meandering on a beach and rearranging seashells. It's 86-47. He wanted to kill Trump, I guess. And then he wants to lie about it and says, well, it's happened. Yeah, James, I've been on some beaches lately, and I saw a lot of 86, 46, 42. No, come on. So that's the message. And the other message is you have to have a free press. Why didn't we know about this? Because Joe Scarborough would get on his show and say, where is American legend? And Don Lemon said, he's not like anybody else. And he created this cult of personality, and they used that because they were in the tank for Obama and Biden and Hillary Clinton, and they thought he was useful. And he knew what he was doing. He was a rank partisan. And he was leaking about Donald Trump, and that's what he did. And he got what he deserved. It's tragic because now he's an old 85-year-old man, and you've got to think about your mortality and your reputation, which he's so obsessed over. And there is a God, and he does see things. There's a Christian God, and even the ancients were pre-Christian knew that the Ophthalmos to Xenos, the eye of Zeus, as Hesiod said, sees everything. And they see everything, every little speck. And I think the idea you're just going to treat people terribly and brag on yourself and brag, and connive for this award, there is some tolerance for that, but not to the degree of that hubris that he displayed. So he got what was coming to him. It's tragic because all he had to do was just say, when they started praising him, all he had to say, I have a team. Here's a CD, and I have critics, and I want to incorporate and learn from them. Because this is the lives of millions of Americans, no one man. But instead he said, I remain the science. He discredited science. Nobody's going to believe a lot. They're going to say, if I say we have to be scientific people, we have to be inductive, we're not deductive, superstitious people prone to conspiracy theories. Somebody out there's going to say, Victor, Victor, Victor. So who had the conspiracy theory about the meat market and the pangolin? Victor, Victor, Victor. Who was the one that told us that the Steele dossier proved that Donald Trump was Putin's collaborator to throw an election? Victor, Victor, Victor. Who told us that Joe Biden was fit as a fiddle and perfectly okay and robust? And I think it was Joe Scarborough. I've never seen a more robust Biden. And Victor, 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 who told us that Hunter's laptop was cooked up in Moscow? So when you do that, you just destroy credibility, and that's what Fauci helped to do. He did more than anybody, along with James Comey, I think, to destroy credibility and discredit himself and his profession. I feel bad about it because I saw this happen firsthand, because I was very close to Scott. He was probably one of my best friends at the Hoover Institution. And I saw them systematically leak about him and go to Trump and whisper in Trump's ear that Scott was too erratic or all this terrible things. And yet I knew that he was right. And that you could, and then when you see these people with PhDs and they act as if they're humane intellectuals, and you're on the Stanford campus and he walks by and they go like this. turn their head against it. Why? Because Fauci planted these lies that Scott Atlas just said, let it rip. He wants everybody to get sick and die. That's what he wants.
Well, Victor, since you are talking about the media and its irresponsibility in our democracy, I have two sports stories here. One is Caitlin Clark has finally responded to all of the foray around her being assaulted by the other basketball player on the basketball court, and she came in an interview with Malika Andrews. She said, and very strongly, she said, it's you guys, the media, that are distorting what's going on in everywhere, not just that one incident, and you're ginning up a bunch of hostilities that are not true to the reality of our basketball, the women's NBA,
I think what she was trying to say is, yes, I am a minority as a white woman heterosexual, but I have, and most of the league, 60% are black lesbian. How that happened, I don't know. I don't think you could say that most of the NBA are black homosexuals or not. But that be it as it may, somebody, I think I mentioned that to somebody, said, Victor, this is hyper-masculinity, but if there was a national organization for fashion, most of the men would be gay. You know what I mean? And many of the women would be straight. So he shot me down on that one. But what I'm getting at is she's in an untenable position, because if she tells the truth and says, I came into this league and I got all this attention because, I mean, white girls from Iowa don't get everything handed on their plate. She got all that attention because she was probably the best female basketball player in a generation. And then she came into this club, which nobody wanted to talk about, was mostly black and lesbian, and she was antithetical as white and heterosexual. And then she was an agile player. She wasn't a muscle woman. But these players, many of them were 6'2" and 200 pounds in muscle, so they thought they were just going to rough her up. And that might have been usual with all rookies, but they took it to the next level that had a racial or sexual component to it. And the more that they did it, the more the media was confused, because the media is left-wing.
Looking the other way is how I would
Yes, the media's thing, well, not just that. The media's idea was that she represents racism because there are 7,000 to 10,000 more fans that are coming out, but they wouldn't come out for black lesbian players. They only came out for a white. Okay, do you think that Stephanie, what's her name? Her partner, that's pointed, you know.
Oh yeah, was it
Robinson?
Cooper?
It's not Robinson. Thompson? I can't remember.
I thought it was Cooper.
But anyway, do you think they would have come? She's beautiful, and she's blonde, and she's charismatic, but she doesn't have the presence that Caitlin Clark. So they're not coming out for her. So the media was lying. They're coming out for her because she is the best player they've ever seen, and she shoots anywhere from the court. And there may be people who like the idea that they want diversity. If this was a black woman and an all-white thing, if suddenly there was a black male hockey player, and he was the only great hockey player in the NHL, of course black people would be proud of that, and they would go out and see it. But it doesn't work the other way. So there were some white people that were proud that she broke into a black-dominated lesbian sport. But whatever that was, all the black players had to do was, we're going to treat her like anybody else, and secretly, we know what's in our interest. These people are coming out and they're paying, and the league is getting rich, and we're no longer orphaned of the NBA. We're starting to get our own charter flights to go. We get nicer hotels. We get bigger raises because of her. And then that was a little good angel on their shoulder. The little devil angel said, yeah, but she's racist, so you gotta knock her a few times, and she won't do anything, and the media will cover it. Anytime she does anything, they'll say it's racist. And they did. So this crazy USA Today columnist basically said that if she grimaces or she overplays an injury, and by the way, all basketball players do that. They go and take a layup and you feel like they're in the ER to get a foul call. But she doesn't do any more than anybody else, but the difference is she gets hit more than anybody else. But basically she said that she was encouraging racism and like Emmett Till lynching. That woman is insane to say that. And she's a racist herself. So what I'm getting at is that this whole Caitlin Clark episode was the proverbial beautiful granite rock of a women's basketball, and then they turned it over. And nobody knew what the Women's National Basketball Association was about. Nobody watched it, and then they turned it over. And they said to themselves, my gosh, this is a mostly black, gay group of women, and they're very intolerant, and can be violent, and they're mean. In the case of Caitlin Clark, and the media hid this, and when they are mean and try to injure her permanently, the media calls her the racist. So that's what she's talking about, the media. She's in a no-win situation, because the only way that the people in the NBA are going to like her, and the only way she can say she's not a racist, is just to have about 2 legs broken and break her neck. And then they're going to say, poor thing, now she can't play anymore, and that's that. That's what they want to do to her. The other thing is, very, very quickly, is that we have DEI fatigue. People are starting to see that DEI is not diversity, equity, inclusion. It is systematic racism. Judging people by the color of your skin and incurring hatred against them to get personal advantages or career advancement on the basis of your color or your sexual orientation or your gender. And it's not compatible with a democratic society. If you think it is, go look and see how India, Brazil, or Indonesia are doing. Not too well. But everybody should just see what that is. And we can see it with the overtly, these candidates that come, especially the second generation, first generation immigrant. What do they all have? What does Mondami and Ilhan Omar and Quiroz and Chevrolet say? They've all said things about stereotyping white people. You know what I mean? White people. We're going to go after whiter, nicer neighborhoods. White supremacists are the greatest danger in the United States, etc., etc. So I think that DEI, I know that a lot of conservatives say, no, Victor, DEI, it's just temporarily, they're going to come back. I don't know. I think people have had it with it. Everybody's had it with it, because they know where it leads to. It leads to Armageddon. You can't continue it. And I think it really helped about Obama. He started it, and he's turned into kind of a buffoon. He really has. He's got these 4 big mansions in Chicago and Washington and Martha's Vineyard in Hawaii. He's a materialist, and then he talks about curbing your appetites and being satisfied with just enough to get by. And he's got Michelle, who's still got a chip on her shoulder because she thinks that people don't think that she's stunningly beautiful, and they're just dysfunctional, and they're obsessed with race, and that's all they talk about.
Yeah, and the case in point was the other athletic story. Ryan Clark was a black commentator for ESPN, and he was always turning everything to race, whether it was, and I think the last thing he did was to criticize the entire Louisiana, I'm not sure exactly what town, but Louisiana the police department, because they had arrested a black guy that had in fact
wrong the way in the opposite lane, and then he gave a little performance art, and then he also, the Louisiana State University system wanted to have a statue of Charlie Kirk after his murder, and he went off. But what really cooked him was Anthony Fauci Ubis. He got on and he said in an interview, I was worried about being laid off because nobody's watching it anymore because it's racist and they don't want, sports, but these people try to go every minutia, every little angle and put race into it and politics, so they're sick of it. But he said, I went in and the guys told me, that you're the best halftime commentator, you're the best sideline commentator, you're the best analyst. And then I walked away and I was kind of like, I am. And then he was so arrogant and hubristic, and I thought to myself when I saw that, because I didn't know really much about him, I thought, oh, you're King Pentheus in the Bacchae, oh, you're Oedipus at the Oedipus Rex. You know what's coming? Because, you're Hippolytus. Oh, the very sight of sex repels me. Do you know where you're going to? And sure enough, then they called him in and said, right in the middle of his show, and said, see you, wouldn't want to be you. And then he starts going, and the tough, black, macho, male athlete who has spouted racial hatred for, and got away with it and said he was irreplaceable. I can't believe what happened to me. This is so unfair. What am I going to do? And that's what he was.
Literally to our audience. He in fact was crying on a podcast.
Just like Don Lemon. And why wouldn't they think that, Don Lemon? Why wouldn't they think that when they were promoted basically on the basis of race and nobody ever said to them, I can't hire you because everything that comes out of your mouth is racial hatred. And if you were white, you would be fired in 2 seconds. And they thought they had a dignity. They were insured. Nobody could touch them. Don Lemon's a great example of a guy who was a CNN anchor, and he's now reduced to running along the subway and putting his phone and doing an interview as somebody passes by, or doing a stunt by going in with a bunch of thugs into a church. He's just destroyed himself.
Well, Victor, we're towards the end of our show with a few more minutes, and I have some comments from various places where your podcast is seen, and these are two sides of views of Israel, so stick with me. The first one is definitely anti-Israel. Israel's a terrorist state. This is Ryan Reed, and he says, great article today, VDH, about the mendacious Mamdani. Mr. Hansen, you are obviously an accomplished thinker and writer, so I must ask, with the blind obedience, why the blind obedience? Why the blind obedience to Israel? I'm told the boomers simply refuse to question anything that they have been taught since the war ended. Clearly, there is a shift in attitudes taking place in this nation. I don't believe anything without evidence. I've actually seen too much. Bibi is a war criminal and Israel is a terrorist state.
When he says evidence, I've seen, and not one data point, not one example, just a search. Why is he a war criminal? Why is he a war criminal? Tell me why. And that means, tell me what you would do when they slaughtered and raped and mutilated and beheaded 1,200 of your own people, and you were the president of a nation, the prime minister with the responsibility to keep them safe, and then you gave them 3 weeks to turn over the perpetrators and give back the hostages, and they killed more people. So what would you do? No, he can't give you any...
No. So this is the other side of the coin, and this is from Real Ken Jackson. Why do so many in the legacy media give the psychotic Palestinians, he puts quotes around Palestinian, a pass on the atrocities they commit against Jews, but wrongly accuse Israel of genocide against the savage psychotics in Gaza? So there you go.
What's weird about that is they don't use the word genocide when the Iranian government
Ernest Penny.
which by the way just hanged a few other people today, I think. They don't give, Trump said 52,000, let's just say it was 45,000 they shot and executed. Nobody said it genocide. Even the inflated Hamas figure was not 50,000. So
who said that? And the reason why I talk about
that really gave the game away. They don't care about the dead or the dead. All they care about is what method can I demonize the Israelis and the Jews. And I'm going to apply a standard to them that I certainly don't apply to Iran, and I don't apply on ethnic cleansing to Azerbaijan, who just did it to the Armenians. I don't do it to the Turks, who ethnically cleanse Cypriots. I don't do it to Mondami, who is a settler colonial family. I call the Israelis, you don't belong in the Middle East. Remember, what's her name? Thomas was her name. She was the head of the White House press corps. She was Lebanese, I think. And she said, why don't you Jews go back to Poland where you belong? And my point is, the Jews have a 4,000-year history in Israel. You tell me where the Indian community has that legacy in Uganda. I don't mind that at all, as I've said repeatedly. I think that's fine if they want to immigrate there and they're talented and they're running the economy, and the Ugandans think that's fine. More power to them. But not when you, as a member of that community, start libeling Israel. And then they could easily say to you, you are a settler colonial. You were put there, your community, by the British Empire to further their imperialistic conquest and subjugation of a native African people. And you stayed on and profited from their labor. And nobody does that. And it would probably be unfair to indict that community, but that's what he does. It's only Israel. So selectivity is the key to anti-Semitism.
All right, well, Victor, there was one correction, or not correction, but just the other basketball player, white basketball player that's been in the news recently is Sophie Cunningham. It was Cunningham, I think. Sophie, I know, is her first name. So, anyway, we'd like to thank our audience for joining us on this Friday News Roundup, and thank you, Victor Davis Hanson.
Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching.
This is Sammy Wink and Victor Davis Hanson, and we're signing off.
Activate them as ethnic voting blocks, and then keep them dependent on welfare, and then be the welfare givers, so these people have to continuously vote for them in order to continue existing in the country. They can't vote? Well, of course they can. They just can't vote immediately. Like, I mean, what do you mean they can't vote? Don't you think about this for more than 3 seconds? This isn't something that happens in one day. This is a plan that happens over 25 years. It happens over 25 years. It happens over 20 years. So I'll give you an example. So in the United States, illegal aliens in the country are counted on the census, which allocates votes and houses for the House of Representatives. So the House of Representatives, we have 3 different branches of government. The House of Representatives is basically, the bigger your state is, the more representatives you have. So what happens if you have a census, and then the census says that your state has 5 million illegal aliens? Well, you get an extra fucking vote. You get 2 extra fucking votes. So that's the way that they can also vote in the United States. And I'm not even talking about amnesty. I'm not talking about voter fraud. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not talking about local elections. I'm talking about actual just systemic things that are just totally undeniable. That's so stupid? Well, yeah, it is stupid, but that's what's happening. Cheap slaves destroy workers' rights? Yeah, and that's why businesses are okay with it too. Because they're bringing in cheap labor. If you can't get the votes at home because your policies sucked, import them from the third world? Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening, and it's happening in America too. It's the same thing. Let me pause this one, we're going to look at another one. These are people protesting. Sounds like playing Resident Evil 4? Yeah, I guess so. What's happening? I just joined. There is a small Spanish colony in Morocco called Ceuta that has been overrun by migrants. Literally thousands of migrants pouring into
Secretary Kennedy, I have to tell you, you and I have disagreed on so many things over the years, and I have learned so much from you and have softened so many of my views. I think you are doing an amazing job. And for things that I just didn't even listen to you on health and everything else, you have opened my eyes to what has been happening to our food, and I thank you. I think you have made a tremendous difference. So thank you, sir.
Well, I'm very grateful to you, and I also want to thank you for that last interview that we did together where you were all doped up on having just returned from dental surgery, and it was one of the best interviews that I've ever done, so I remain deeply appreciative of that.
Thank you. Well, I tried not to be doped up, but maybe it would make for a better show. A lot of people would claim yes. Secretary Kennedy, you found these diaries, and everybody is saying these are private diaries. Could you please lay this to rest? These are not private. They were, I don't know why he put them on, but they were put on government servers.
Yeah, well, you know, every American knows this who has a job. If you go into your office and the company that you work for gives you a laptop, and you do work on that laptop, it belongs to the company. And that is true. That is federal law. If you do something on a government server, it belongs to the government. So he was keeping a diary for the book that he intended to write about his life. And at the end of his term, just before he was leaving, he emailed the entire diary to himself. Some years and years of keeping this daily journal, he emailed it to himself so that he could write his book, and that's how we found it, through those emails.
But he knows that. I mean,
it's not a diary. It's not a diary in the sense, like you said, that a teenage girl keeps a diary that's private and has, a lock on it. It's a government computer, a government laptop on government time, keeping this account of what his official duties are, and then making private observations about them. The liberal media is now feigning indignation that we released private diaries and violated his privacy, but it's a crazy assertion, and what they're really doing is covering up this, what you pointed out, this vast media malpractice that took place during COVID, when they elevated this guy to a deified status, who had funded the weaponization of coronavirus, who then had given it to a Chinese military-run lab to two scientists there, Xi Jinping and Ben Hu, who further weaponized it using NIH technology that they got from another NIH grantee, Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina. And they created SARS-CoV-2, and Ben Hu, who was seen as a second scientist on it, is patient zero. So he was the first person to get sick from COVID-19, and then, if you look at the subway line that goes from the Wuhan lab, all the original cases were on that subway line. So these scientists were infected, they were getting on the subway, people were getting infected, at each stop along the way. And that subway led right from the Wuhan lab to the airport. So people then spread it internationally. And, instead of exercising skepticism, the American media elevated this guy, silenced his opponents, silenced his critics, silenced anyone who questioned his authority, told us all we had to trust the expert when the expert was lying to us. and then punishing us, marginalizing and vilifying and demonizing anybody who questioned him. And it was really an extraordinary situation. And he was lying about everything. He was lying about masks. He was lying about social distancing. He was lying about natural immunity. He was lying about the ability of the vaccine to prevent transmission. He took the vaccine himself and he immediately got COVID. And he lied about the safety. We now know the one thing that I learned from his diary, because most of this stuff I already know. But the one thing I learned is that he had a pulmonary infarction after getting the Moderna vaccine. So Glenn, he took the Moderna vaccine at a very highly publicized press conference in which he was demonstrating his confidence in the safety of the product by taking the shot publicly in front of the whole world. Then he gets pulmonary infarction, which is NIH and CDC and FDA had done a joint document in which they looked at the expected side effects of the vaccine as adverse events. And pulmonary infarction is one of the top expected injuries. So he got that. He got a life-threatening pulmonary infarction, which was a blood clot, and went out and obstructed his lungs. And he was he was getting
because he was in his late 70s. That could happen. So it's not. We're not sure that that's what caused it, but it is likely that that's what caused it. But the problem to me is he had the best medical care and then never, ever revealed it. He should have said, there's a possibility that this, happened to me. There is a possibility that this happened. Instead, he goes out, he never says this out loud. It's never reported. And then he says it's perfectly safe. He doesn't know that. We don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true with every vaccine injury. You can never prove causation. But the whole, the whole purpose is, the whole system is based upon people being honest about reporting all of the injuries that happen after vaccine. And then, do an analysis, and you say, hey, we're seeing elevated levels of this, that, the other. If you don't report it, nobody can make those kind of analysis. And he did not report his. He didn't report it to the VAERS system. He didn't tell the public. And anyway,
He's a guy who claims to be science itself, but is rejecting the scientific method on being able to find out if something is safe or not. So yesterday he's testifying and he says nothing, and I kind of expected that. Unfortunately, as soon as it began, I was like, he's not going to. They're going to make this against Rand Paul. They're going to just say Rand Paul has a vendetta, blah blah blah. I said today that if you give him a congressional grant of immunity and say, look, we just want the answers, he must answer. At this point, I am less interested. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to see that guy in a perp walk so badly. I think he is one of the most evil guys. I believe he knew what he was doing. He's responsible for millions of people's death. He locked people out of seeing their parents and their grandparents as they were dying. He changed the world. And it's all because of his arrogance. But at this point, we're not going to see him go to jail. I just don't think that's going to happen. If we give him congressional immunity, then he must go to jail. He must answer the questions. I want this to be finally settled in court or in Congress, where everyone, including the press, can stop telling us that none of these facts are true, because it's all true.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is that what he did, the Democrats keep saying he saved 1 million lives. We had the highest death count per capita of any nation in the world. But we had 3,000 deaths per million population. The African continent had 1/10 that, about 320 per million population.
Wow.
There were nations like Haiti and Nigeria that had 14 people per million population, so basically zero max 1% vaccination, 14 deaths per million population. That's 1/200th of us. We had the highest death rate of any country in the world. Whatever we were doing was the worst performance of any country. So saying, the claim that he saved 1 million lives is not really supported by facts.
I think we're so clear-minded.
So he is responsible as well for the largest loss of trust with our doctors, our medical system, our quote-unquote experts. I mean, we know that a pandemic is going to happen again at some point. But I got to tell you, we will lose a lot of lives because people will not trust anyone. What has to happen next to him? What do you recommend? What do you think is coming? What has to happen so we can put this behind us and restore the trust?
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of all, big tech right now is run by a bunch of elitist people who all happen to vote the same way and who all happen to live in huge cities on the West Coast. And so Result Hunter takes those elitist values and elitist sources and kind of pushes them down a little bit in the search engine. Meanwhile, it takes those sources of truth that we believe have been deranked a little bit by Google, and it pushes those up a bit. And the main thing that you'll gain from using the search engine is that your ad revenue that you generate by going all over the web will be much more likely to support conservatives and things that support conservative values rather than things that support elitist and liberal cultural values. So thank you. Please use resulthunter.com if you're a conservative. Hit try now to go over there, and it'll become your default when you hit add to browser and follow the instructions. See you at resulthunter.com.
So much hate, so many lies, and the big lie is about the ICC, the International Criminal Court, so-called.
Step up to the plate this summer with your Irving Rewards card. 1 and 2 fuel swipes win a fuel discount of up to 75 cents per gallon. Every swipe is a chance to win free fuel for a year. Hit a home run and win with Irving Rewards.
We gave 1 million tons of food for them, but he decided to do that, and we didn't know. Why did he do that? He was going to come to Israel.
Well, we're doing that at NIH right now and across the agency. But yesterday we announced that an end to all dangerous gain-of-function science. So the science and the studies, the NIH-funded studies that gave us the COVID-19 pandemic will never happen again. And the new policy has incentives and punishments for scientists and universities that participate in any kind of dangerous gain-of-function studies. So we're ending that, but also we have new protocols for pandemic response, and they recognize constitutional rights. The Constitution was built for hard times, not for easy times. You can't just wave it like we did. In fact, in 1780, between the end of the Revolution and the ratification of the Bill of Rights, we had multiple pandemics in our country: smallpox, yellow fever, typhus, typhoid. They killed tens of thousands of people, and the framers were well aware of that, but they did not put a pandemic exemption in the United States Constitution. And unfortunately, under Dr. Fauci's leadership and with the pitchforks and torches, of the American media, we dismantled the Constitution. We got rid of the First Amendment, freedom of speech. We were censoring people. I mean, I got censored. I was accused of misinformation because I said this probably came from the lab in Wuhan. And Fauci was saying that privately in his diary in January of so even before I said that, he said he was saying it could not have come from the wet market. And then for 2 years he tried to tell us it came from the wet market. Oh, I never put any misinformation on my Instagram account, but it was shut down. All of my social media was shut down. And this happened, as you know, doctors were delicensed, people were harassed and silenced. With the social distancing regulation got rid of our right to assemble. We had 3.5 million businesses shut down without due process, without just compensation. Jury trials were shut down for anybody, no matter how negligent they were, who supplied a countermeasure. All the, our Fourth Amendment protections against unwarranted searches and seizures were abandoned, and with all this track and trace that you have to show your medical records before you leave your home or travel or whatever. The whole Constitution was dismantled, and that can never happen again. And the pandemic responses that we're working out are pandemic responses that are more traditional. They use traditional methods, and they use AI, and we use all of the well-established methods that do not interfere with our constitutional rights.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Thank you, sir. Thanks for spending the time with me. I appreciate it. Our Health and Human Services Secretary. You bet. Thank you.
There seems to be a rise in virulent anti-Semitism. You have to see it.
When a female legislator disagreed with Troy Jackson, he threw a water bottle at her in anger. Jackson was known for bullying, and his brash conduct with women raised alarm bells about his temperament. Troy Jackson, another phony we can't trust.
Finally, no more PDT rule. Now, traders of all account sizes have more flexibility than ever before. With rapid order entry and bracket orders that let traders manage entry, profit target, and stop loss, all in one ticket. Tasty trade.
Raped, kidnapped, decapitated the women after they were raped, and you see how monstrous this is. Slaughtered our men, burned our babies alive.
I think the whole system is broken. I mean, I can't believe that after coming out of Hopkins, so I saw the bill, it was over $400,000. And
oh my God.
They didn't call her once to see how she was doing. I took my dog to the vet. They called me the next day. Hey, how's Walter doing? And he's there for like a simple thing. I hate to say it, but I kind of, I can almost see this as equally.
Who's on the right side of civilization? Who supports them? It's in the Hague that could arrest American soldiers because you don't recognize this corrupt body any more than we do. And they could say that the President of the United States is a war criminal, that American soldiers valiantly fighting next to us, shoulder to shoulder against the tyranny in Tehran, that they're war criminals. They could pick them up.
The 45,000 dead Iranians that were killed by the Iranian leadership, were they ever charged?
No, of course not. They don't charge them. They don't charge Hezbollah. They don't charge all these other terror problems. Yeah, supposedly they charge Hamas, but a guy who's already dead. Yeah. So no, it's fake. It's one big fake. But it's like the other things that they pour into social media, and they try to corrupt.
Right. When you think of
to try to
October 7th,
basically take them for a ride. Play them for suckers. Mm-hmm. We can tell you all these lies about Israel, you'll believe it, and it serves their purposes. But I think the American people are smarter than that.
See, I think there are two things. I think there is a rise of anti-Semitism that I want to ask you about, and then I think there is a rise of anti-Semitism that is manufactured. We know geopolitical foes pay tens of millions of dollars to try to get on social media. They target young people with an anti-Israel and oftentimes anti-American message. Again, they're trying to indoctrinate, I believe, young people. But if you look at the halls of Congress, if you look at college campuses, listen to some of the people on the airwaves, if you look worldwide, there seems to be a rise in virulent anti-Semitism. You have to see it. You're a small country of less than 10 million people. On October 7th, you lost the equivalent, based on your population, extrapolated out our population, of 40,000 Americans in a day.
Correct.
After 9/11, you would come on my shows regularly supporting our country, the U.S. What would Americans want America to do if 40,000 Americans died in a day?
Not only murdered, but also
raped,
kidnapped, and decapitated the women after they raped them. See how monstrous this is? Slaughtered our men, burnt our babies alive, took 251 men, women, and children, babies, hostage. These are monsters, okay? And they're trying to sell, like the mayor of New York, he supports these monsters. He celebrated October 7th, this massacre, the greatest massacre.
So did his wife on social media, proving the most virulent texts and posts.
So that's the guy I'm going to show up and talk against. I'm going to go to the UN in New York, and I'm going to speak the truth about what happened, what is happening, who's on the right side of civilization, who supports these barbarians. Israel is fighting the war against barbarism. Israel is fighting the war for civilization. And we're being vilified. But I tell young Americans, here's one thing you should do. Just check the facts. Check the facts. And don't be deceived by this campaign. Don't be taking it for suckers. You're not. You're smart people. Just check the facts.
Lindsay's dream was that, and he talked to me often. He said it on air, he said it off air. It was a passion of his. As you know, he visited you often. You probably got sick of him visiting.
Actually, I did.
These gentlemen.
I'd walk into a room with Lindsay, and you smile. Oh, you see Lindsay, you smile.
That was true.
You see this blonde guy, start smiling.
But he wouldn't just travel to your country. He would travel to Saudi Arabia, he would travel to the Emirates, he would travel to the UAE. He told me many times that he hoped on the other end of this conflict with Iran, once Iranian hegemony, the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran went away, he wanted a forever peace in the region. Yet the impression unfairly given to him by some was the opposite. But his dream was what I just identified. You talked to him about that.
All the time. And I think he said to me that he wanted this year, 2026, to be the year when we hit the bad guys and expand the circle of peace. And you're right, and he was right to connect the two. Because Arab countries will come to us if they're less frightened of Iran, or they're more confident that Israel has the wherewithal to contain Iran, make sure that Iran does not hit our Arab neighbors. And yes, we can do that. It's going to be a process, but the first thing you need for peace? Strength. It's called peace through strength. We're strong, and we deter the enemies of peace, then that's how you get peace. That's how the President Trump and I, under his leadership, we got the Abraham Accords. We got 4 peace treaties with 4 Arab countries because we had projected strength against Iran, and that brought these Arab countries to us. And the same thing can happen now. Iran is a lot weaker than it was before we did epic fury